Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Women Unleashed podcast. Today, we have your co-host, Britt, and our special guest, Michael, from Rapids Couple Counselling. You would have heard him on our recent episode all about hypnotism. And today, we have him talking about relationships, which I'm super excited for. So welcome, Michael.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. Now, I need to ask something, Taylor and Michael. Is hypnotism a word or is it hypnosis? Because I've been carrying on with hypnosis.
Hypnosis refers to the state of that you're in. So the state of hypnosis. Hypnotism is the process by which hypnosis is induced. So they're both correct words.
Oh, woohoo! Well, good for you.
Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. All right. Do you want to kickstart us off, Michael, with anything you wanted to share before we ask some questions, or do you just want us to ask some questions?
I think a lot of people really badly misunderstand the way relationships work. And it isn't that they wouldn't have a great relationship, but a lot of people just don't know the way they actually work, and they make a number of very common mistakes. The first one is they end up taking their partner for granted. They think that if you make a choice to be with your partner, that choice is one and done, right? It's always done. And that's badly inaccurate because, frequently I have couples come in front of me and they break up. Now, I do everything I can to make sure they don't, but sometimes they will be, there's a saying in the couples counselling world that most people seek out help 6 to 12 months before them when they should. And so a lot of people take their partner for granted. And because they take their partner for granted, they stop trying. They stop trying to meet their partner's needs. They stop trying to show up for their partner. They give their phone more attention than their partner. And then they wonder why over 2 or 3 years, their partner's going, what the hell am I here for? So taking your partner for granted is probably one of the biggest mistakes anyone can make. So that's the first one, the one that people don't understand. The next one that I see all the time is that people don't understand, but it's really critical to understand, is that desire is not a natural function. Now, Britt will know what I mean when I say that, but desire is not a natural function. At the beginning of a relationships are driven by desire maximization. Both of you are behaving as desirably as you possibly can, and both of you are making sure you meet each other's needs. So, from what I can see, human beings have 5 fundamental needs: time and attention, emotional intimacy, physical intimacy and sex, distance and time apart, because it's important to have time apart from your partner. And the final one is to make your partner feel desired and wanted. And over a period, at the beginning of the relationship, you're doing all those things in spades because you want to make sure your partner desires you. You want to make sure your partner desires a relationship with you. And so relationships are driven at the beginning by desire maximization. Everybody's trying to maximize their desire at the beginning. But the problem is 7 years down the road, when you've got 3 screaming kids or 2 screaming kids, and you're exhausted and feel like you're hit by a truck, you had this nipple vampire sucking the life out of your nipples for 12 hours a day. When both people have seriously time poor, when you stop giving your partner your time and attention, your sex life has crashed or become not very good, then people lose desire for each other. And at the beginning, we like to think desire is always going to be there, but that is seriously not true. It's not only a little bit untrue, it's badly inaccurate. But people think that desire is always going to be there. And that's the second big mistake. The third big mistake is that they blame their partner for their own emotional states. And that they look at their partner and they go, if I hammer away at that guy or that girl hard enough for long enough, maybe I might be happy. And they don't see that the foundation of a good relationship is emotional self-responsibility. And the foundation of a good relationship is both people turning up, bringing the best themselves to the relationship, and doing so on an ongoing basis. And unfortunately, in our society, we've got a thing where it's, if you're not happy, either leave or blame the other person. And I can tell you from working with 350 couples a year that isn't a strategy that's going to get you success. And the reason why my work with clients goes really fast is I go after those three things that I talked about: taking partner for granted, like misunderstanding choice, misunderstanding desire, and misunderstanding who needs to change.
Yeah, wow. Even though I've heard them before, it's still refreshing to hear it again.
Yeah.
What I find... Okay, this is a question. You're here, you're the expert. Say you take one of those top three things like desire, and in order to be desirable, you need to behave in a desirable way.
Yes.
Now, I find what's most attractive is not when someone is trying to please me.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually when they're treating themselves with respect.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question to you is, do you see that a lot of challenges in relationships that people project towards each other are also just like how they are not treating themselves appropriately, and then extending that out to the person they're in relationship with?
There is an extent of that. But I think I say all the time, people have relationships up to the level of their parents' relationship skills, because that's where they learnt relationships from. Well, Taylor just started blinking like crazy. That one really kind of got her.
I wanted to start laughing, but it would have just been way too loud for the microphone.
So people have relationships up to the level of their parents' relationship skills. Now, frequently, people don't get particularly good models from their parents, right? And then when a relationship goes in, is having difficulty, what do? They ask all of their friends, who are equally clueless. It's like, 20 blind people sort of wandering into the middle of a minefield, and it's like, can someone lead me the way out? And one blind person says, I know. Let's go this way. It hasn't worked for me, but maybe it'll work for all of us. And so people have relationship up to the level of parents' relationship skills. And I say all the time, the foundation of a good relationship is emotional self-regulation. And so what I aim for with people all the time is making sure they regulate their own emotional states. Now, getting back to desire, one of the things I've noticed is human beings find their partner regulating their own emotional states as intensely desirable. Now, I don't know why, but I see it day in, day out, because I aim for that. I'd say to my clients, if you want your relationship partner to desire you, regulate your own emotional states. Now, these days, people regulate their emotional states with a number of commonly available things. Food. Like 70% of Australians are overweight or obese. Common strategy. Alcohol. 6% of Australian population are alcoholics. Like porn. 6% of Australians are porn addicts. Right? Drugs. Roughly 15% of Australians have marijuana occasionally. Then there's the hard drugs. Now, there's not too many of those around, but there's enough people doing it.
Yeah.
And the next thing they do is mobile phones, right? People regulate their own emotions by mobile phones. You know, they sit down and they completely zone out. And all of these approaches for emotional self-regulation, whilst common and readily available, don't work in the long run. Or at least they can work temporarily.
So what's
Sorry, yes, Britt?
Yeah, what's a healthy way to regulate your own emotions?
Exercise is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Horse riding. Do you know anyone that rides a horse?
Me? Yeah, I don't. That doesn't regulate. I find myself needing to actively regulate my emotions when I'm riding because I get tense. I can notice my face is all tense and my body then gets rigid and, so. But walking, on the other hand, walking and deep breathing, that assists me to regulate my emotions. And running.
Yeah, so exercise. Yeah. So firstly is exercise. The University of Western Australia did a survey of 118 different types of exercise, and they published that finding, I think, in 2022. And they looked at 118 different sorts of exercise and found that the types of exercise that had the greatest impact on people's emotional self-regulation, and the thing that beat everything was dancing.
Yes.
It was the number one method in terms of scientifically studied form of exercise that improved emotional self-regulation. Yeah. And so cool. It beat everything else by a long stroke. So the top four were dancing, running and walking, cycling and swimming.
So just to be clear, is this dancing with music on, like any music you want?
Yeah, dancing with music on.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
I have a theory about why that works, but it might get a little bit complicated. Would you like me to tell you what it is?
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So firstly, there are a number of different systems in the human body, one of which is the endocrine system, which works at regulating hormones, but it also can work and is partially responsible for regulation of neurotransmitters. Next thing is the chorionic circuit in the brain, which also regulates tryptophan, dopamine, serotonin, and cortisol. But the final one is the proprioception system. So the proprioception system is a system in your body which pays attention to where your body is in three-dimensional space. So in every joint, at the end of every bone in your muscles, there's more or less an activation node. There's also something called osteocytes. And osteocytes in your body are these small little kind of organs, tiny, tiny, tiny little things that are in your bones that transmit information to your brain via chemical signals when your body is under load. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so when your body's under load, when you're experiencing, movement, your osteocytes are telling your brain, we're experiencing movement, make this stronger. We need extra capacity, right? And so the more you do that, the stronger your bones become. Hence, why it's incredibly important for women as they get older to prevent osteoporosis is to do some kind of light load-bearing exercise, because it signals the brain to make the bones stronger. Now, the proprioception system figures out where everything is in three-dimensional space. So if you're moving your body within three-dimensional space, it maintains, it regulates the emotional state. I don't know why, but it just does, right? So activation of your bones, activation of the proprioception system, and also when your heart rate gets over 120, that regulates your brain. Now, if you're doing dancing, it does all of those three things, because in order to dance, you have to pay close attention to where everything is in three-dimensional space. You have to pay close attention to the music. You're moving your body. Your bones are getting impact. You're also having to coordinate with somebody else, so you have to pay really close attention to your spatial awareness. And so it's this combination of those things where you're both having an other-centered awareness, an awareness of music, awareness of your body, and how it's all working in three-dimensional space. That creates, I think, that particular thing that that creates that intense benefit from processing emotional states. Yeah, but a lot of people, most people these days, like most Australians, are 70% of Australians are overweight or obese. Most people don't dance. Most people don't do exercise. Yeah, and so the things that regulated every single tribal culture that you want to talk about or name or look at have dancing as a significant part of their cultural of their cultural practices. Right, every celebration involves dancing.
I like to have a little dance party sometimes with Sophia in the kitchen.
Awesome.
I like dancing while I'm driving sometimes, like just my, with my arms to music.
Yeah. I do that.
So
I used to dance a lot when I was younger, which is interesting.
Yeah. So the stuff that make people well regulated, people stop doing in terms of emotional states, and that feeds into their relationships. Like I say to people, it's like if you imagine, like I'm for the people listening to this, when you do, when you're well regulated, where you're doing exercise, preferably dancing, but when you're doing exercise, your threshold for emotional reactivity is really high. So your partner has to do something that's really particularly horrible for you to get pissed off when you're really well exercised. But when you're tired, when you're hungry, when you're exhausted, when you're sick, when you're emotional, when you're drunk, when you're premenopausal, or when you're premenstrual, when all of those things are going on, your emotional reactivity is substantially higher. So the threshold for you losing your shit is much, much lower. Right.
Makes sense.
Now, I want to say something just about the type of exercise, because you're saying running was it second or third or fourth in that study?
Running was second, yeah.
Yeah, second. Yeah. I'd be really curious to know in which way the running was happening, because I think it's very easy to zone out. Like you can put music in and run to music so you can block out the chatter in your head about running, and also you don't then become present to really where your feet are going. You're just you're just kind of doing the motion, and so that proprioception element that you were talking about is kind of not there.
So I didn't go into the study all that much. I didn't look at the specifics. So because it was more of a meta-analysis where they looked at everything, compared everything just from a big perspective detail. So I don't have the answer to that question. But all the time, like it's getting back to the whole relationship. All the time I ask clients, the first thing I say is, how's your exercise program doing? If your relationship is in crisis, how are you going with your exercise program? And we don't do any. Wow, maybe it's a good idea to start. And loads of times when I tell people to do exercise, once they start doing it, they end up fighting a lot less because they're both much better regulated. Now, people can deliberately, through conscious volition, regulate their own emotional states. But when I work with people, I'm working on two things. Firstly, I'm working on what's going on for them from a understanding, mental, cognitive perspective. But they also have to work with the physiology, right? If someone's chugging down a liter of whiskey a night, they're not going to be too well regulated during the day, right? Or I had a client he drank 20 beers a day, right?
A lot of beer.
I once had a client. She was not a big woman, and she was drinking 3 liters of wine a day.
Damn.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
Like I'd be cactus in a week if I did that.
I mean, there are those high functioning alcoholics, right? People that can cope with a lot more alcohol.
Definitely.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
it's a tolerance, but it doesn't make for great relationships.
No.
And one of the things that and it's a chicken and the egg kind of thing. Like, if your relationship isn't going well, if your needs aren't being met, if you're not getting your partner's time and attention, if you're not having the emotional intimacy you want, if your sex life is boring and repetitive and not very good, or non-existent, then and you're not having time apart, and your partner never makes you feel desired, it's really easy to knock the top off a bottle, and to feel good. Like, the feel good is immediate. It takes minutes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And human beings want to feel good. We prefer to feel good from our relationship, but in the absence of that, well, people pick an alternative. Yeah.
To feel less shit, even if it's
Yeah, that's right.
great.
Or it
The
can be a way
problem
to connect, can't it, too, sometimes?
Oh,
Maybe?
indeed, absolutely. Yeah. So, look, and alcohol has a function in the maintenance of relationships in every culture that's got alcohol, like, and that's most of them. Most South American tribes had alcohol. Most African tribes had some kind of beer. Most European, pre-industrialization societies and pre-agricultural societies had some kind of alcohol. So alcohol's part of pretty much every culture, and it can really, yes, it can really help at the end of the day when you're tired, when you're stressed. To have a glass of wine, it can help. The problem is sometimes that coping mechanism gets away, and it becomes a dependency rather than something that adds to your relationship.
Oh, definitely.
And it's quite a common strategy. Like 6% of the population are alcoholics.
Wow.
It's interesting. I guess for our listeners and stuff, when would be the time to come and see what signs would be there that you go, I guess catching it before it's gotten to that really dire point,
Yeah. So let me take you through the stages that most relationships go through.
Okay.
Have I talked to you about the threshold pattern before, Taylor?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think so.
This is truly a remarkable thing. 80% of relationships will go through what I'm about to lay out for you. The first step is the attraction phase. The attraction phase is the part of your relationship where you're trying to maximize desire. You're giving each other, your partner, your time and attention. Your emotional needs being met. Your physical needs are met. You're shaking like rabbits and having sex 3 or 4 times a day or 3 or 4 times a week. All right? Mm-hmm. You're having time apart, and you're making each other feel desired and wanted all the time. Leaving little love notes around, or you're, sending chocolates or flowers or roses or, all this kind of stuff. You make sure you put in extra effort at the beginning. But that normally only lasts about 12 to 18 months. And the problem is that a lot of people think it's going to last forever, but it doesn't. Now, normally around the 12 to 18 months mark, couples slide into the appreciation phase. In the appreciation phase, what tends to happen is that you learn to appreciate all the parts of your partner nobody else knows about. So how nice it might be that they might make, their signature, chicken pesto salad, right, whatever. How nice it might be they might make lasagna. How nice it might be that your partner might take the bins out on a cold winter's morning on bin day, and they don't have to be reminded. You learn to appreciate all those things. Once again, normally around the 2 to 3 year mark, that's when that changes. Now, normally around the 2 to 3 year mark, people decide they're going to be together forever on the erroneous expectation that nothing's ever going to change. And the problem is that that's always wrong. Or at least it's wrong for about 87% of couples. And it's normally around the 2 to 3 year mark when people decide they're going to be together forever. Most weddings occur between the 2 to 3 year mark. And a lot of people think everything is always going to be the same the way it is now. Now, the problem is that's not true for a number of reasons. Firstly, once again, people take their partner for granted. Additionally, they, merely by virtue of committing to your partner over the longer term, it changes the meaning of the relationship. And changes in meaning create changes in behavior. Now, people get married to change the meaning, but some of the meaning changes create behavioral changes that people don't want. Right? Now, normally around the 3-year mark, 2 to 3 year mark, that's when people get into the habituation phase. So they get in habit of relating. So every Friday night you might go and get fish and chips, or go to a cafe or a pub or a bar or something. Saturday mornings you go to the markets, and Sunday mornings you have sleep-in Sunday morning sex. Until the first child shows up, and that sleep-in Sunday morning sex is the fondest memory you don't get to experience for at least a decade. Right? Because you've got a small child going, I'm hungry, I'm bored, play with me, play Lego with me, read me a story, read books with me. You get the picture. Right? And so after the 3 to 4 year mark, couples slide into the expectation phase. Now, in the expectation phase, you expect all the stuff at the beginning. But the problem is that doesn't happen because, well, you've got kids stress, you've got work stress, you've got financial stress. And then what also, because expectations aren't being met, resentment builds up. Resentment is always around expectations that haven't been met. And then resentment starts to pile on. And the problem is resentment, it's accretive. It builds on top of itself. Now, normally around the 5 to 6 year mark, that's when couples slide into the disillusionment phase. Normally you've got 1 or 2 children showing up. Now, also, you need to remember these timeframes aren't precise. Their timeframes are pretty flexible. Some people take 12 years to do this, but on average, most people take 6 and 9 years to get to threshold. Now, normally around 5 to 6 years mark, that's where people slide into disillusionment. And disillusionment phase is where looking at each other saying, is this it? Like, is this really it? Right? Because my needs aren't being met, you know. My partner hasn't gone down on me in about 6 months. I'm counting the days the last time I had my pussy licked. You know, like, that shit doesn't happen anymore, right? Sort of the sex that used to be vibrant, you know, erotic, playful and fun is, you know, devolved down into a tap on the shoulder at 9 o'clock at night saying, hey, how about it, when you're completely exhausted. Foreplay disappears. Your partner stops making the effort, and then you do too, right? Because you're exhausted. And then what tends to happen then is couples slide into the threshold phase. Now, this normally happens between the 6 and 9 year mark. And the threshold phase is where people look at each other saying, should I stay, should I go? And they're normally, the threshold phase is defined by some stereotypical behaviors. And those are, we're having communication problems. That's what they say, clients say. They feel like they're flatmates who are raising 2 children together. Their passion intimacy is gone. Often the sex becomes infrequent or just non-existent. And what also happens then is people start fighting all the time. They fight about meaningless, pointless bullshit they would never have thought about fighting about at the beginning in a million years. But in the end, it makes sense because in the absence of positive attention, human beings will seek out negative attention because negative attention is better than indifference. So in the threshold phase, people fight with each other, connect with each other because the pain of the indifference that their partner's demonstrating with them is not something they want. So they'll fight them instead. And then both people end up going, should I stay or should I go? And then that's when they pick up the phone to call me. And that normally happens between the 6 and 9 year mark. Now, the problem is by then, a lot of the damage is done and desire has died. Right? The desire is dead as a doornail. And what tends to happen then is often one person, normally the woman, will say, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And that saying is very, very common in our culture. But that I love you, but I'm not in love with you is just saying that desire has died and I don't know how to get it back. And a lot of women will get to that point in the relationship somewhere between the 6 and 10 year mark. And it really distresses them that they don't desire their partner. They still love them, but they don't desire them. Which brings me back to what I said at the beginning, that desire is not a natural function. And so the answer to your question, that's a long-winded way of explaining to answer your question, the answer to the question is when both the people look at each other saying, "Is this it?" That's the right time, right?
Which is
About
5
4
to
to 5
6 years, or
5
like
to
the
6 years, or
disillusionment
4 to 5
phase.
years. Yeah, before they get to threshold.
I want to disagree, because I think that what you said earlier is a lot of people don't have great relationship models.
Yes.
And so it doesn't take, like, not even a not very smart person just to look at their parents and go, do I want a relationship like that? It takes 2 seconds. And if you're in that camp and in the no camp, then when you get into a relationship, I think it's a great idea to actually go see someone like you to say, hey, like, how do we set ourselves up for success here? Rather than waiting for shit to go bad.
Look, 2 to 3 year mark actually is preferable than 4 to 5. That's for sure. And actually had a couple the other day that turned up going, we've been together for 2 years. Things aren't going quite right, but we think we really need to kind of fix this before it goes south. And I'm like, oh, wow, fantastic. It's like, it's like putting out a little fire that's gone out instead of a raging inferno where the entire valley is on fire going, oh, let's bring in the water dropping planes because that's what it's going to need to get the thing done, right? So it's better to pour out the fire when it's really little,
And so that's why I have the perspective of you as like, you could even call you like a relationship coach. When you want to get better at something, you get a coach.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You bet. And once again, people have bad models. And it's just a lot of people would have better relationships if they knew how. But they don't know how. And no one they know really knows. And their parents probably don't know. And so they get to a point where they're like, how do we fix this? Gee, I don't know. But let's just... And once again, avoidance is not, I say this all the time, avoidance is not an effective problem-solving strategy.
No.
But a lot of people won't avoid fixing problems to their car. They won't avoid fixing problems to their business, but they'll avoid fixing the problems in their relationship because they think somehow it's magically going to get better. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
And they think that, oh, well, like, I'm a human being. Shouldn't I know how to have a relationship? Like, shouldn't that just come naturally? Well, no. It doesn't.
Or worst thing, they get on a TikTok. And start listening to people talking on TikTok. Now
But hang on, I hear you're now on TikTok, aren't you? So there should be some good material on there.
There is some good material out there. There's not a lot of it, but there's some good material out there. There's a few people who I genuinely respect, and yeah. So, but not a lot. Mostly because a lot of people are really good to give an opinion. But, the focus question would be, how many relationships have you fixed? I put out a video not so long ago. If you had a problem with your tooth, would you go to a mechanic or would you go to a dentist? Because you wouldn't get, if you had a problem with your car, would you go to a dentist? No, when you got a problem with your tooth, you go to the dentist. You got a problem with the car, you go to a mechanic. And you got a problem with your relationship, you go to someone who's an expert who's fixed hundreds and hundreds of relationships. But some people will be like, I've got a problem with my relationship. I'm going to talk to my brother who's a mechanic and he'll tell me what to do. With the probably appropriate response and appropriate outcome.
And I think one of the danger zones of asking other people too is like, you won't get the full story of,
yes,
like what they've endured in the whole relationship. You'll just get like what's happening for them right now or recent past and one side of it.
Yeah, that's a big problem because what tends to happen is one person, the relationship's not going so great. So what do? They take to Facebook and put, having relationship challenges. And Facebook's an echo chamber. Like all social media is an echo chamber. Rarely will you get people who are your friends and family saying, have you considered the fact that you might be part of the problem? And have you considered the fact that perpetually trying to punish your partner in order for you to change your behavior is not going to work? Have you considered that fact? Like, your family and friends won't do that.
No. I also think sometimes...
At least.
Sorry.
That's what I'd be saying to my family and friends.
But you're an expert.
I know.
I sometimes think too, sharing all the time like that can, depending on who you're sharing with, can make them not like your partner, and it can cause problems with them all coming together. When you hang out as a group, they kind of don't like your partner anymore because of the shit you've been sharing with them.
I've heard that loads of times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the last thing anyone should do if they're having a relationship problem is jump onto social media, because it just becomes a pile-on.
Yep.
And the person, it destroys the possibility of repairing the relationship, and also makes any potential repairs being very, very awkward.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think there's things that you can't come back from? Like, I've had someone tell me that they think cheating is something there's no coming back from that if your partner has an affair. Do you agree? What do you think? Is there something where it's like, if that obviously there's extreme, like physical abuse, there's those types of things that I think probably would stop. But yeah, what do you think? Just cheating, or is there anything that you're just like, no, you're done, you just can't come back?
The answer to that question is rather nuanced, and let me attempt to address it with some detail. The answer to that question is yes, no, maybe. So there are some things that you should not accept. So emotional, physical abuse. And I've seen in front of my eyes both men and women be emotionally, physically abusive. Jeez. So no gender has a monopoly on cruelty. No.
I get
so that. I've now, men and women commit abuse to each other differently. But emotional, physical abuse is not good, and should not be accepted, and you should leave. So getting involved, being in a relationship with someone who's a narcissist, that's a bad idea because it's not going to work. But the term narcissist is actually extremely broadly used, mostly inappropriately so. Roughly only 2 to 5% of the population are actually clinically diagnosable as narcissists. It's actually a very small proportion of the population. And in my work with, because I talk to about 1,000 people a year on their relationships, and of that 1,000 people I talk to a year, I probably really only see around 2 to 5% of them are actually real, like, rigid narcissists, right? And they don't like me. Because the last thing a narcissist wants to do is take responsibility for their own emotional states. And that's the first thing I tell them to do. The first thing. So most of the time, narcissists will never come back for a second session, or they come back for a second session and they'll walk out in the middle of it. So getting to the whole cheating thing. Some people call liking another person's picture on Instagram cheating. Right? Mm-hmm. That's not cheating. Some people call, sending text messages, so having an emotional connection with someone, cheating. Well, you could probably say that's an emotional affair, right? And I would probably agree with that definition. But then there's just general or run-of-the-mill breach of trust where you lie about communicating with someone outside of your relationship. And then you should get to what the real physical affair, where someone's put their bits where they shouldn't, or allowed their bits to be put in them where they shouldn't.
Yeah.
So some things can't be overcome. Some betrayals are so horrendous and so heinous you would not believe. That said, I've worked with a lot of people who have tried, and successfully so, overcome infidelity. And a lot of those people say before it happened to them, their thoughts were any cheating and I'm done, over, see you later. But the investment they have in their relationship, the part the relationship plays in their lives, and the fact they do actually want to have a future with person, all those things mitigate against the burning the relationship down and create a context in which they're prepared to attempt to repair the relationship. Mm. If a couple have, like, several children together and they've got businesses together and one of them cheats, well, they literally have to tear their entire life to bits to get divorced. And it's incredibly traumatic and damaging. And that said, people in that context, people are frequently prepared to attempt to work through it and move past it. But it's a difficult journey.
Yeah.
For most of the couples, I see about 100 couples a year who deal with infidelity. Right? Yeah. So, depending on who you talk to, roughly 20% of people will actually experience it. And of the people that cheat, only about 20% of people are repeat cheaters. 75% of people who cheat never, ever, ever do it again.
Yeah, okay.
And
is that if they actually address the issues in the relationship?
No, they never do it again, because the experience of cheating is so emotionally searing and it's so emotionally damaging, they wouldn't do it to themselves, let alone their relationship partner.
Right, okay. Self-preservation.
No. Yeah. Most people who cheat, once they've found out and they see the pain they're causing their partner, a good chunk of them are suicidal.
Yeah. Wow.
They often talk about self-harm. They often talk about violating their values. They often talk about destroying who they thought they were. They often talk about suicide, driving into a bridge, drinking themselves off, jumping off a bridge, driving into a pylon at 120 kilometers an hour. A lot of people who cheat have incredibly horrible self-talk, and they do that for months, if not years.
Why did they do it in the first place then?
Okay.
It's really interesting to feel so awful about it.
No, they don't. Like they that's just a way to avoid actually addressing how you got there in the first place, just by making yourself feel really, really bad.
Okay. So the answer to your question, Taylor, is men and women cheat for different reasons. Typically, men cheat because they want to feel desired, like wanted, sexually wanted.
Yep.
And over a long period of time, most men still feel tolerated.
For
most men in long-term relationships, they can't remember when their partner made them feel incredibly wanted. Yeah. Once I had his clients and I'm talking to them and I'm going like, and she's going, he should be doing this and he should be doing this and he should be doing that and he should be doing this and he should be doing this. And it's like, I saw this dude and he's like wilting like a flower under the sun. He's like going, and I looked at him and went, when was the last time she made you feel really wanted? Like wanted? And he looked at me and his eyes blinked and his eyes went sideways, so it says doing a transvariational search. And he was like trying to access the memory, couldn't do it. Bang, started crying his eyes out, crying like a baby because he couldn't remember the last time she made him feel desired. That's actually a very common experience in men. Their partner never makes them feel desired. They work. They literally grind their bodies in a pace to care for their wives and kids, but their partner never looks at them and says, come take me. I want you to take me right now. Right? She did that at the beginning, but she stops doing it. And so for men, roughly, it's funny, like, the universal thing men cheat on for is to feel desired. All right? Yeah. Now, women cheat for different reasons. When I've actually spoken to women who have cheated, what they say is that their affair partner, they felt emotionally connected with their affair partner, and they felt like their affair partner cared about their emotions and was interested in them emotionally. Because men stopped doing that. Yeah.
Mm.
And so most of the time cheating is around getting outside the relationship what you're not getting inside.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
And most people, one of the things I've noticed, won't cheat flippantly. Like they know what they're doing is wrong. There is a strong prohibition against extra relationship sexual encounters that appears to be consistent cross-culturally across many cultures. And, it doesn't take... Someone doesn't have to explain to you about jealousy, and people don't have to explain to you about emotional pain if someone cheats on you. It's there. It's automatic. It's so hardwired and so intense in humans that you don't have to explain it. All right, it's just hard coded into our neurobiology, and this is why for a lot of there's a lot of cultural noise around polyamory and ethical non-monogamy. That's not going to work, because we've got a few 100,000 years of human Homo sapiens evolution that says extramarital affairs or extramarital extra relationships, sexual encounters is bad. And here's a big dump of emotions, all right? And so I don't think you're going to be able... You can't think your way around hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution. People like to think they can, but I can tell you it doesn't work. And so so the answer to your question is, in terms of cheating, is some people can't get over it. And when a couple comes to me and they are dealing with infidelity, I have to say, you have to make a decision whether or not you can get over it. All right?
Yeah, I guess it would also depend on the length, like what happened. Like if it was a one night. Well, I don't know. Like for me, I think. Well, I don't know. I haven't experienced it before.
No,
but
so.
But
So the reason why I laughed is I remembered a client, and I'm like, so sometimes clients will sell stories to me. I'm like going, that's like,
you have to check yourself and blank face.
yeah. So you're right. I mean, meeting someone at a pub and having a one night stand with them, some people might find forgivable. Seducing your sister and having sex with her for 16 years, it probably isn't.
Well, it's a very long time to not stop, isn't it? It's a long time to not go, hang on. I don't know.
Yeah. And the other thing too, that these days, is people are so damn dumb when they cheat. Like, they think they're going to get away with it, but these days you can get away with nothing. Everything you do is recorded digitally, and all it takes is someone snooping to find out. The other thing too that's really interesting is 95% of the people who I've spoken to who have actually cheated, and so who have actually found out their partner's cheated, 95% knew. They knew in their bones that something was wrong. And they went hunting for the information afterwards. 95%. And there's a reason why. It's because human beings, we are energetic beings having a human experience. And when you connect with someone, you have a relationship with them, you form, from what I can tell, an energetic connection between the two of you. When you think about your partner, when you have sex with them, when you're giving them your awareness, that feeds that energetic connection. But when someone starts doing that to somebody else, that energetic connection isn't being fed, and people notice the absence of that. And that's that feeling in their bones where they're like, I just got a funny feeling. I'm just going to, like, while they're in the shower, I'm just going to check their phone. Or I got this funny feeling. Let me just check the old tablet. Oh, okay, I've still got the logins. Oh, those emails. Whoa. Right? But it's that feeling that something's not right, most of the time, is accurate. Yeah.
Interesting.
Not all the time, because some people are really good at hallucinating and accusing their partner of shit that hasn't happened. And I've seen a few of those. Also, sometimes I have people sit in front of me just lie through their teeth, like they're just. And I'm looking at the partner going like, I'm not believing that, and she's going like, and I'm going like, yeah, and it's like, and the dude's like going, just lying through his teeth. It's like, none of us are believing this, so why are you lying? You know, like, come up with a different story.
Yeah.
But so for the most part, some people can get through it, but it's difficult. And for people attempting to work through infidelity, it normally takes around 3 to 6 months of a roller coaster of emotions. And often when people deal with infidelity, I have to do some hypnosis with them to assist them to regulate and stabilize their emotional states.
Makes sense. Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have a question, Britt?
Lots of questions. Tell us about the second date rule, Michael.
Sure. It's a rule of communication I teach my clients that immediately starts improving desire. So when I'm trying to work with clients, I'm always attempting to work on desire, because that's the thing that dies, or at least fades away. So the second date rule is, or was, a way of shortcutting a lot of the traditional couples counselling, where they say, if your partner says this, you say that, and in this context, your partner says this, and then you say that. That's really good in theory, yeah, but not so good in practice because it's way too detailed, right? The last time you're really, really exhausted and your partner said something that you're really pissed about, do you want to go back and read through a book that's 100 pages long to find the right thing to say? No. You're going to haul off and go, and they're like, oh, shit, oh, okay, I didn't get that response I was interested in, right? So the second date rule is basically this. People should communicate in a long-term relationship as if they're on a second date at all times. Because when people are on a second date, there's a number of characteristics of communication of people on a second date. Firstly is they communicate with kindness, right? If you're an aggressive arsehole or really, really bitchy and snarky, would you get a third one? No, right?
You shouldn't.
Yeah, that's right.
Might be into
it depends, you know. You might have met someone that's interested in punishment, in which case it's your lucky day.
Jackpot.
Like, you know, but the second date rule is basically where both people on a second date, people regulate. Also, on a second date, people regulate their own emotional states. Fundamentally, the second date rule is an encouragement for you to regulate your own emotional states, because if you don't on a second date, you won't get a third one. Like, but here's the thing, Taylor, is that people give themselves permission to be emotionally dysregulated with their partner they would do with nobody else. Right? I say to people all the time, if you lost your shit with your boss the way you do with your partner, how long would it take for you to lose your job? And there's this sheepish kind of like, oh yeah, I'd be fired in about 5 seconds. But people give themselves permission to do that with their partner.
And I think what's missing is that also, like, people don't even know what emotional regulation looks like. So they can't even begin to, like, express themselves in a responsible way with their partners. Because when you said earlier, people, emotional regulation, so a person regulating their own emotional state is other people find desirable.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, actually, when like my fiance is like, oh my God, like I'm such an idiot, or like I am finding it really tough right now. Like I just really need to, or when they do that and it's just all over there with them, you know, their experience, they're owning it. And they're like, I'm having a hard time right now. I'm just really can't, you know, deal with this or whatever. Like, it's like, wow, you're aware that it's you, like you're just having like whatever's going on over there, you're not trying to like project it out here at me.
Yeah.
Or make me think it's my experience or that I've done something wrong. And that's something I'm working on as well is looking at, okay, well, how do I express myself rather than project it out? Yeah.
Yeah. And a long time ago, I had this client and really interesting dude, very, very successful businessman, owned multiple businesses, came from London, grew up in a really rough neighborhood in London, like super rough. Like he was, like the regular stabbings were in his area. So he used to kind of going to and from school. He was asking himself the question, "Am I going to get stabbed today?" And so got out of there. Once again, really poor family, gets to Australia. I'm going to work and I'm going to make a success. Made incredible success, but his dad had issues with anger management, and then he got in a relationship and they had a small baby, and he turned into his dad. Right, and he was losing his shit all the time. And so I told him the second date rule. And then I did, because I normally cover the second date rule in the first session. Second session comes around and he's looking at me and he just starts crying. And I said, I'm curious, like, what's going on, man? And he said, look, you know the second date rule? I went, yeah. He said, over the last 2 weeks I've been trying to do that. And when I realized I was wanting to lose my shit, and when I realized what I'd been doing to her, was that I was becoming my father. I gave myself permission to have the same emotional regulation as my dad, and when he was having a bad time, he lost his shit and got angry, and everyone suffered. And I realized that not only I'd grown up to become him, but I also realized I didn't want to be that person. And so I started regulating. So when I felt like getting angry like I used to with my dad, I stopped. And what I tell people, if that's the case, is do some exercise, because that cleans out the brain. Like, just a massive fan of exercise for emotional self-regulation. And then what he noticed was she stopped being responsive to his anger, as in she stopped expecting his anger, and then she could bring desire to him. And he said, I realized I was killing the relationship by showing up really badly, undesirably, because I couldn't regulate my states. But now I'm applying the second date rule. It's like, I know this is coming from me. It's just coming from me. And then I turned to her and I said, so tell me what happens for you when you watch him struggle with himself, when you watch him struggle with a lifetime of emotion dysregulation and breaking a lifetime's worth of habits. What happens goes on for you that she goes, that's really fucking hot and I want to bang him.
Yeah.
Right?
That's cool.
And so the second date rule is around regulate your own emotional states. And if you wouldn't say do something on a second date, don't say I do it. Right? On a second date, you don't lose your shit. You don't, go pull out your phone. Actually, these days people will pull out the phone and go, oh yeah, you're having a bad day. Oh, hey, look, I'm just going to watch this my Facebook feed for 2 hours while you sit there. But you're going to really like it because I get to give you 2 minutes of extremely brief sex after tapping on the shoulder at 9 o'clock at night. How about that? That sounds like a great idea. Like, if you did it on a second date, you wouldn't get a third one.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. Wow. And so that's the thing. So that's a second date rule. So it works really, really well. But it only works if both people do it. Now that's the thing. Both people have to go, we're going to commit to this. But it's amazing. It's like magic. It just turns a switch. And then desire starts being built in the relationship. So when people show up, desire is really low. And by changing how they communicate, by changing how their sexual engagement, by changing how they fight, or about which they fight, then by changing all those things, desire all of a sudden gets created. And then people look at each other going, actually, I kind of like you. And I really want to be with you. And I can see a future with you. And then they go away and they rock up to a session and go, we don't really need you anymore. I'm like, okay, cool. So I've done my job. So see you later.
Yeah, extraordinary.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I certainly experienced that when me and Nathan came and saw you. So, yeah, that's wonderful. All right, well,
it's a strange thing coming to the final session going, we don't know why we're coming, but we're just coming anyway.
yeah, I think that's important to get to that realization. It's such a nice place.
And the way it normally works is people get that place and then explain how I did it, right? Because and I say, hey, this is how you make this function through time. Because my sincerest wish is to never see my clients again. This is how to make this permanent through time. Yeah, because that's just kind of my personal sense of ethics. I want to make sure I give people the tools to make their lives infinitely better forever. And then they die, but we all have to, so it's okay.
Yeah, that's what happens.
It is.
Oh, that's fantastic. I know that there is so much more that you can share with people, and like what I want to invite our listeners to do is really ask questions. Like if there are things you want to know more about, and then maybe we can have Michael back again. But yeah, we really want you to engage with this because I think the work that you do is really important, and I want to see more happy people, happy relationships, happy families, kids growing up with healthy parents, and yeah, I think it's better for everyone. So,
indeed, thank you, Britt. And yeah, a little bit of knowledge goes a really long way. And that most people, once again, make some really simple mistakes that, when corrected, get desire flourishing. And it doesn't take a lot. Nothing's unnoticed. But but the single greatest determinant, I say this all the time, the single greatest determinant of relationships moving forward is that both people have to show up, and both people have to put in the effort. And if both people do, change happens really quickly. So, but thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. I really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. You're really
how you doing,
welcome.
Taylor? How you doing?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty fucking triggered right now. So I'm just sitting here listening. But it's good.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, I know. It's all over my face.
Going on for you?
Pardon?
I was calibrating what was going on for you, and you've been doing some stuff while I've been talking.
It's all over my face. It's okay. I can't hide it. I don't have what are those, like a poker face? I don't have one of those. So
No. See, I'm glad you could see it, Michael, because my feed of Taylor is like really blurry. So I can't, I could see her sort of yawning and doing these things, but you picked up on way more than I have. So it's awesome.
Oh, it's my job.
Yeah. I could, I know too. I could see myself and I'm like, Jesus. So that's good. I think we should have you back though. I think this is like a conversation that we could talk about forever. So
sure,
cool.
No problem.
Definitely. Well,
sometimes in a session, I look at people who do something and go, "What's that?" And they go, "What?" Like that thought or emotion you just had, and they're like, "You noticed?" I'm like, "It's my job, right? That thing, that's important." They're like, "Oh, well, blah, 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 blah." Boom, they start crying.
Yeah.
How much do you spend on tissues a year, Michael?
I replace my box quite regularly. So I get, it's funny, guys. So some guys don't deal with women crying very well. Well, I get 20 women a week, up to 20 women a week crying in front of me. It's like, it's not a normal day unless there's somebody crying in front of me. Sometimes 3 in a day. Well, actually, the most amount of clients I've seen is did 8 sessions in a day. So,
wow, that is awesome. That is so cool. Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap it up. Michael, thank you so much for being on the Women Unleashed podcast again. And if anyone listening wants to go see Michael, you can find him at Rapid Couples Counselling on Google. Do a quick Google. You'll see him there. He's on Instagram, YouTube. If you do go and see him and you want his book, that he's written about relationships and thriving in flux. You can also say that you heard about him on our podcast and he'll give it to you for free, which is great.
That's right.
So thank you. Thanks for that gift. And please send us some feedback, subscribe, share the podcast, and we will see you again in a fortnight.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thanks very much for having me on it. I really appreciated talking tonight.
Thank you.
You are so welcome.